Hello, bonsoir, and welcome to the Get French Football News Show. I'm Nathan Staples, and joining me this evening are French football expert Rich Allen and our new regular panelist, GFFN's very own Peter Rutzler. Welcome to the show. The transfer window is nearing its close, and Twitter is all the hype about all the big moves potentially on the horizon, with a player scattered with the letter M getting all the hype, all the talk about Thiago Motta's birthday, and more, including your questions after the latest headlines. Paris Saint-Germain got us kicked off on Friday evening as they put Saint-Etienne to the sword 3-0 thanks to 2 goals from Edison Cavani. On Saturday afternoon, Nantes held Lyon to a 0-0 draw thanks to a good save from Tatarusanu in the first half, while Amiens put Nice again to another defeat, scoring 3 goals, 1 from Gael Kakuta and 2 from new signing Moussa Konate. Bordeaux won 2-1 at home to Troyes, while Caen managed a 1-0 win against currently pointless Metz. Also in the multiplex, Dijon earned their first win of the season against Montpellier with a 2-1 win, while Toulouse played an entertaining affair against Rennes, winning 3-2 that sees the away side still within the bottom 2. On Sunday, Guingamp eventually saw out Strasbourg 2-0 with goals from Mustafa Diallo and Jimmy Briand, while Angers drew 1-1 against Lille, who are still struggling after their first win of the season under Marcelo Bielsa. And on Sunday, Monaco proved that they have not lost much of a step this season as they put Marseille to an absolute thrashing, 6-1, with 4 goals in the first half and several from Radamel Falcao. And in transfer news, we heard earlier this week, that Ousmane Dembele has joined Barcelona from Dortmund, the former Rennes man, going for an initial fee believed to be around the 100 million euros mark that might rise to around the 150 million euros mark. And there's a few possible transfers in the pipeline that may go through in the next couple of days. Didier Deschamps has issued a sort of warning to his team that if anyone wants to leave, they can't. They will have to do a medical at Clairefontaine. Moves possibly for Thomas Lemar, almost definitely for Mbappe, with rumours of Jovetic coming through the other way. He's been photoed in that number 10 shirt today. There's all some interesting things to keep an eye on. And that's all for the news. But remember, to stay up to date with all your French football latest, head on over to our website at www.getfootballnewsfrance.com and follow us on Twitter at GFFN. We'll start this week with that big transfer news involving a Frenchman, and that's Ousmane Dembele's move to Barcelona. I mentioned a moment ago, it reportedly costed the Catalans an initial 104 million euros, but could rise to almost 150 with add-ons. I know Rich, much like myself, we saw the youngster scoring his debut against Bordeaux just under 2 years ago. It seems a little surreal, doesn't it?
It's bonkers, isn't it? This time 2 years ago, he wasn't even in the squad at Rennes. He was still in the process of tying up his first professional contract. Now he's the second most expensive player in the world. And you're right, it's very surreal. He's always been quite clear that Barcelona was where he wanted to play. So I think everybody was sort of under the impression that Dortmund were only going to be a stopgap. I didn't expect it to be only a one-season stopgap, and I certainly didn't expect the kind of transfer fee that has been paid to have been paid. But Neymar has destroyed everything logical that we thought we knew about the transfer window. So, hence the numbers quoted. But it's from my perspective, I've been a fan of Dembele. I did see a few of his games when he was playing for the reserves. He did seem a standout player then. So to have seen his meteoric rise, that's the only way to describe it. And even that's probably doing it a disservice. To go from that to second most expensive player in the world and being the sort of new hope of Barcelona in less than 2 years is crazy, but wonderful at the same time.
Yeah, Richard's got all the hipster points with his tweet from the Frenchman while he was still in the youth sides. But you've got some bragging rights there, haven't you, Rich?
I'll be claiming that to the day I die.
I thought you might be. Yeah, I agree. It seems a bit strange thinking back to that Bordeaux game. I don't think he even played that well on that evening, but he grabbed a little bit of a lucky goal against the Bayern. And then ever since then, he's been outstanding. And Peter, you did an excellent piece for the site earlier this week on him as the transfer sort of went through. Let's talk about his time in Ligue to start off with, because obviously that's what we probably know him best for. He was a real shining light in that Rennes team that just looked pretty abject otherwise within Tep with injury, and they didn't really have a spark, but he really lit up this league, didn't he? Peter, are you there? Might be having some technical issues with Peter, so I'll throw you that way, your way again, Rich. I mean, we both probably watched him a considerable amount during that first season while he was still at Rennes. He just added a little bit extra to that team, didn't he?
He was the team for a period from when he first came into that side, pretty much through to the end of the season. He was the team. The hat trick in the derby against Nantes, which Rennes fans, myself included, still go on about, still have fun with the Nantes fans. He scored that, albeit deflected, but a really good goal in that. I think it was 5-3. It finished at the Velodrome against Marseille. It seemed there was a stage where of the season, that brief season, where it seemed he could do no wrong. Everything he did was just magical to watch. Every time he got on the ball, everyone was excited. I probably hasten to add that a lot of opposition fans were probably almost just as excited, because there was just this sense of this young player who's come from nowhere, could get the ball, run at players, and produce an end product. So it was wonderful to see. He got a move in the summer to Dortmund, but yeah, there was a time during that season in Ligue when no one was touching him, not even close.
Yeah, and it was great to see. And I'll bring you back in here with this, Peter. And I know you wrote a nice little profile on him, but let's talk a little bit about his time in the Bundesliga with Dortmund. I mean, he went into a side that had a lot of established players. We're thinking Royce, obviously, he had a couple of injury problems. There was a lot of hype over Christian Pulisic and Emre Moore in that team. Rafael Guerreiro went in that same summer. Yet, maybe behind someone like Aubameyang, he was the one that was really the driving force of a team that's maybe was a little bit of transition, at least last season.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There certainly were in that stage of transition. But what was so impressive about Dembele when he made the switch to the Bundesliga was the fact that he filled the boots of Henrik Mkhitaryan. And Mkhitaryan was so essential to Dortmund's success the season before. I think he scored about 12 goals, 15 assists, something like that. And he essentially was bought as the man to replace him, and that's a very difficult thing, and the pressure that comes with that. And he formed this formidable relationship with Aubameyang. I think he laid on it was 10 goals, I think, specifically for Aubameyang, which is the highest combination between two players. So, I mean, he did hit the ground running there, and that's quite reassuring, especially if you're a Barcelona fan and you're looking at him. Can he then make the step to Barcelona and fill the boots of someone even bigger? But no, he was very impressive for Borussia Dortmund, and it was the right move, I think. He had the chance to move to Barcelona from Rennes directly, as well as many other suitors, but he made the right choice after all the saga that surrounded the deal with his agents and whatever else. So, and that worked very well. Obviously, like Rich, I'm stunned as anyone that he's gone so quickly from Rennes' second team to being the second most expensive player of all time. So, but I think the experience at Dortmund will have done him a load of good, especially having to take on the mantle of another player who was so important to the team. And I think that would be really essential in Barcelona.
Yeah, because that's essentially what he'll be doing, Rich, in Barcelona. And filling the boots of anyone can be difficult. Like Peter mentioned, Mkhitaryan was superb for Dortmund, but filling the boots of Neymar, it's an unenviable task, at least, anyway.
If a player's going to do it, a player like Dembele is the kind of player to achieve that. Certainly his time with Rennes and seemingly his time with Dortmund has been a challenge, I think, for the clubs to match his own expectations of what he wants. So, as I said earlier, he's been very clear as soon as he emerged into the Rennes team, seemingly, that Barcelona were his dream. That's where he wanted to play. So Rennes obviously had to try and they're not going to match, the levels of Barcelona, obviously, but they had to try and meet him some way as to what can they help him achieve in that first season with Rennes. Dortmund then had to do similar. He's now reached Barcelona. Now what he's got is Barcelona have got a level of expectation, and now he's got to match that. So that's going to be something that's going to be quite new to him. I think the attitude that he has, the ego, but when I say ego, I mean that in a relatively positive manner, I think means that, if any player is going to get close to filling Neymar's boots, it may take a while, but Dembele seemingly is one of those that are around at the minute that could do that.
Yeah, and very quickly, really linking this back to Ligue and everything, Peter, how much of a benefit is this to Rennes? I mean, they had a reasonable clause on them where I believe it was about the 25% mark. So they're getting about between 25 and 30 million back for him, depending on add-ons and the rest. That's a nice little cash boost to get almost out of the blue, isn't it?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, it eclipses the money they received. I think it was for Shabani Nonda was their record fee received. So it's certainly that, and he's not even on their book. So it's a huge boost. But then you have to think, well, is Gourcuff the right man to spend it? Because I think obviously it's a boost for Rennes, and they've had their outlays, and I think they spent £30 million. I think it roughly equates to, and at the moment, I mean, the second bottom, 2 points against Troyes and Dijon. They need to invest in certain areas. They need a keeper. I think they signed Kubek today. Is that right, Rich?
It is, yes. Yeah, he's been brought in.
So whether he's the answer, we will see. That's plainly been an issue so far this season. Striker, they've been linked with Depreville, and they've been talking of another centre half as well. But the real issue for Rennes is you give all this money to the club, but Christian Gourcuff's the one who's going to have to spend it, or well, at least deal with the personnel. And at the moment, I wouldn't say he's the right man to do it. He seems to be. I find it absolutely baffling that he's so rigid with the way he's lining up Rennes, the formation of a 4-4-2 / a 4-4-1-1. It's just quite stunning, really. So, I mean, there is a lot of talent in that Rennes team at the moment as it is, and obviously this cash boost is important. I think they will invest it. I've tried to contact the club, and they said the future will tell about them spending it. So I do expect most of that to be reinvested at some point. But the issue lies with Gourcuff, I think, and I know Rich would take that on and add to that.
Yeah, I bet you're happy with the money at least, Rich.
I think that it's a nice bit of income. The only thing I will take from that is that it fortunately isn't really Gourcuff that's spending it. As you say, though, it's Gourcuff that's got to deal with the players, and the money actually so far this has been spent very wisely. It's not been then put into place effectively. So, yeah, I'll perhaps be touching on Gourcuff a little bit later.
Yeah, and I want to throw this final bit on this to you, Rich, as well. How can this help French football in the future? Might there be even a couple more eyes on it, thinking that if Barcelona would have worked harder last summer, they could have got him for a fraction of the price? I mean, Mbappe will help with that as well. Surely this is just going to bring more attention to the league and some of these smaller teams that are producing some excellent players.
Well, I think it definitely will. More that Ligue 1 is the place to be for young, exciting players. What I think would also then do for French clubs is make them a bit more savvy when it comes to them selling players. We all know in the past that French teams have been notoriously weak, I suppose, when it comes to negotiating sales of their star players. I think over the last couple of seasons, they've toughened up a little bit, and seeing Rennes put in a clause like this in their contract, and now we're obviously dealing with such huge numbers when it comes to transfers. I think it can only mean that French clubs can get that bit tougher with their negotiations.
Yeah, and it's a really great move for him. I'm very, very pleased. It's one of those strange situations where you see a young player rise through the ranks so quickly, but let's wish him all the best for his adventures in Barcelona. Now, I'm going to shift gears now to stay in the transfer window, but really focus on these last few days because we're still waiting on bated breath for a few moves. I do want to do a very interesting story I've just cropped up on that's been pointed out by our friend Jonathan Johnson on Twitter about Stefan Jovetic. I do want to get a good giggle out of this for you listening at home. The former Manchester City striker Stefan Jovetic, obviously at Sevilla at the moment, is in a strange, bizarre story of this weekend. He was on his way to Monaco to join the French champions, and you might have seen a photo of him earlier today wearing the number 10 shirt, which is possibly signalling the exit of Mbappe. We'll wait and see. I assume it will. But he was caught a helicopter from the Nice airport to watch their game with Marseille. But also on that helicopter was the Marseille chairman, who did not recognise him and started a conversation with them and told them that they were signing Jovetic. Yes, surprisingly, the striker revealed who he was. Eraud was not particularly happy and told him that a medical had been arranged and a deal had been agreed. And as you might have already seen today, Jovetic is pretty much 99.999% on his way to Monaco. So that will get you a nice giggle. But the window will slam shut on Friday. And as I've mentioned earlier, Deschamps has sort of imposed a pseudo finish today as his players will not be permitted to leave the camp for deals at least. So some of the things would have had to be arranged otherwise. There's still a few deals that are being muted. So let's start with that big fish one, Rich, and that's Kylian Mbappe. It's a little bit of a mess financially, whether he goes out on loan initially, whether it's the lump sum now, whether it includes Fabinho, although there's reports that they won't sell Fabinho at all to Paris Saint-Germain this summer, possibly might still sell him abroad. But he still sees this deal of seeing Mbappe in Paris by the end of this window.
It's going to happen, isn't it? I think everyone's now resigned to the fact that he's going to be going. It just seems to now be a case of how he's going to go. Is it going to be cash up front? Is it going to be this slightly murkier loan deal with an option to buy? But I've been quite vocal on Twitter about my feelings of the Mbappe move to PSG. It's going to be good, obviously, for PSG. It hopefully will be good for Mbappe. It's really not great, I don't think, for the league as a whole, where you've got the country's second biggest side selling their biggest asset to their only rival. So it's inevitable. We had, you said, those pictures of Jovetic coming out with the ring, but it's going to happen. PSG were, enjoying teasing everybody, them and Thomas Meunier earlier today, before trolling everybody and bringing out the Happy Birthday Thiago Motta card. But yeah, it's going to happen. It will almost certainly happen, I think, in the next couple of days. We had Deschamps as well saying that, he's changing clubs, this, that, and the other. So it's a case now of when, not if, isn't it?
Yeah, it was an awful Freudian slip from the French manager this afternoon. It was he very quickly retracted that statement. I wonder why. But Peter, the mention of the loan deals with an option to buy, it seems a little bit dodgy, really, when you think of financial fair play coming into effect. It's skirting the rules. Is it clever or is it cheeky?
Well, I think it's quite obviously clever and cheeky. I think I got a tweet today actually saying, is there another example of a title rival loaning their best player to a direct rival? And it's left me a bit stuck. I think I should look into it, but because it is quite striking that that Monaco will be willing to let that happen. I think in terms of financial fair play, it's what was interesting, actually. There was an article by The Guardian, I think it was today or yesterday, and they were saying that they've been in constant discussions with UEFA about what they're doing in the transfer market, PSG. That was the upshot I took from it. Looking at a loan deal as a possible way of restructuring. But with financial fair play, anyway, it looks at it over a broad 3-year period anyway. So it would still take into account the fee come the time that he does actually leave. And I'm sure that the fact that the loan deal would then be compulsory purchase would then affect their budget, their balances, and what they can present to UEFA and financial bodies. But yeah, I mean, what's also relative important to think about is that this isn't necessary. Of course, spending almost 400 million on 2 players is extraordinary, but Neymar, for example, when they signed Neymar, Manchester City had still spent more money than Paris Saint-Germain by that point. Obviously, Mbappe takes it to another level, but if it is a loan, then relatively speaking, they are excessive compared to most clubs, but it's not extreme in the current market. And especially when you look at it over a set number of years, obviously PSG have invested. The gulf is not as large as perhaps we would think, and especially when they structure wages and contracts over a certain amount of time. What is interesting is that if they do sign Mbappe, though, you have to expect a big name player who we do not expect to leave. And at the moment, that is exceptionally difficult to call. I mean, there's Draxler, but they've only just signed him. From his perspective, I think he would probably be willing to look for a move elsewhere, because at the moment it doesn't look like he's going to get enough game time that would warrant what he thinks he deserves at PSG. Di Maria, he didn't have a great game at all on Friday night against Saint Etienne, but he is at the moment first choice. I think he will lose that place if Mbappe does join. So potentially he could be pushed out the door too. Lucas, I think he was told by Emery that he doesn't have a future in any case, but I wouldn't necessarily think he would be enough in terms of departure. So it's an interesting one, and I think if Mbappe does go for it, even if it is a loan, I think the loan could then facilitate a player leaving later, but someone else will go, and it'll be interesting to see who that is.
It might be 2 or 3 by the end of the window from the sounds of things now. And yeah, I get the loan deal. I think from Monaco's point of view, at least, it's because of Mbappe's contract and him possibly not signing a new one now. He will have only a year left next summer. The price then probably goes down from a lot of these big clubs. It's not really worth it. Bank on the hype now if they can. Very quickly on him, Rich. We've just mentioned the amount of players that would have to shift out or move around if he does come. He's a left-sided forward, really, which is where Neymar plays. How does he fit in to this PSG side?
I struggle to see how he does in the current formation. I struggle to see how he does. One line of thought is he a very expensive mid to long term replacement for Cavani? That's quite a way to spend some money on a future replacement. But yeah, as you say, his preferred position is either up front or out towards the left. So yeah, logic would say I don't know how that would work with Cavani and Neymar. Does Neymar perhaps move and just be told, look, you can play wherever you want. We've spent all that money on you. Mbappe plays in a more left-sided role, Cavani up front, with a hope that Neymar has the sense to push a little bit further right. But then are you risking not getting the best out of Neymar? You've got, as you both pointed out, we've got a long list of high-profile names who will also be vying for opportunity. You've got Draxler, Di Maria, you've got Lucas Moura, you've got Guedes as well. Yeah, I think you're looking at least 2 of those having to go. But I honestly think Emery's going to have to look at his formation. If he's going to be spending that money on Neymar, that money on Mbappe, that current formation does not lend itself to those 2 players playing and then getting the best out of them.
Yeah, and if you thought there was pressure on Emery last season, blimey, it's been maybe turned up to 11 this past summer with the deals that they've gone through. Let's talk about another Monaco player now, Peter, and that's Thomas Lemar, who's been in the news again. He was talked to about Arsenal a few times this summer. They never really came in with a big enough offer. Liverpool come in with a supposedly much larger offer, but it's still, there's been 2 bids supposedly today turned down by the Monegasque. They're supposedly asking for at least 100 million euros, maybe being a little bit cheeky, knowing that the Coutinho deal might still be on the table from Barcelona. Do you think this one happens before the window, or do you think Monaco is shutting the door on this one by rejecting those two deals?
I think the Lamar deal is not as likely as other potential deals to go through. I mean, unless Liverpool do stump up 100 million, but I think that would also be dependent on Barcelona. And are Barcelona then are willing to spend another 100 million euros plus on a player, which goes so much, flies in the face of what they're supposed to stand for, in terms of developing players and everything like that, and basically playing Real Madrid's game and something that Real Madrid can then throw back at them. So I think they're very much intertwined. I can't see Monaco letting him go, though. I think there comes a point where you're selling everyone. And as much as Monaco have prepared admirably for the departures of Bernardo Silva and Bakayoko and Mendy, for example, and potentially Fabinho, but apparently they've shut the door on that too. I don't think they can from their perspective, having to cope with Lamar going as well. I don't think they will be able to deal with that. But should Liverpool manage to push it through, if they do decide to pay 100 million euros, then that's a different ball game, and then you do get a transfer that goes through. I can't see that happening necessarily. Although the rumours are strong, that's for sure.
Sorry to carry us Oholic, which is a fantastic name for a keeper that's barely played for you. But sorry for his question today, who's asked about if Lamar to LFC is likely. But Rich, if he did go to Liverpool, how does he fit into that side? I mean, they had a fantastic performance at the weekend, but it was the likes of Sane and Salah really breaking as those attacking forwards with Firmino as like a false nine, as you will. Does he really fit that mould? He's more of a winger sometimes. He can play as a 10, but does that fit that formation? Again, there's questions, isn't there?
There is, and I think it would be another signing where the manager would then have to look at the way that he plays, the formation that he plays. I would expect that if Liverpool did sign him, and my standpoint is I don't think they actually will, but if they did, my view would that they would perhaps look at playing him slightly more centrally. I think they've had a lot of joy with the likes of Mane, Firmino, Salah. Those three as a forward line have looked very impressive so far this season. So I would have an inkling, I suppose, that he would look to drop Lamar in a more central role. I think Lamar himself has expressed a slight preference for playing there as well. I'm still of a believer that you get the best out of him when he plays wide on the left, but you'd like to think the player knows best. But ultimately, for me, it's almost a moot point because I'll probably have to eat my words on this, but it's a deal I don't see getting over the line before the end of the month.
No, I think Monaco politely shut the door on them this afternoon, at least anyway. Rejecting two bids is then probably saying that there's too late in the day, really, for them to be any more movement on it. Very quickly on another deal that we've briefly mentioned that's probably going through to Ligue, and that's Stefan Jovetic to Monaco. I'll throw this at you first, Peter. What do you think to the deal?
I think it's a very, very good signing for Monaco. I think he's more of a replacement for Germain, potentially. But yeah, I think the story about him switching sides from Marseille goes down pretty well, and obviously it's a reflection of last night's game as well. A double blow, really, 7-1. I think what he can add for Monaco up front is an ability to drop off, to work with like Germain does with Marseille and did with Monaco. Build-up play is a very important part of how he plays. He's an excellent finisher. He's a player who was billed with so much potential when he was younger, and I feel he hasn't yet reached the heights that were tipped for him. So I think maybe Monaco might be the place he can really push on. He'll get the opportunity to do that. I can imagine him striking a very good partnership with Falcao, who's in terrific form at the moment. And I think it's good for Monaco in the sense that, I mean, they started Diakabi up front, and he's been excellent, and he really has taken his game to another level. I don't think he will be capable of doing that consistently this season, but you never know, he might do. But I think having someone as experienced as Jovetic, especially with European football, this season coming up is a good move for all parties in that respect, and except Marseille, of course.
Yeah, he's an interesting foil, isn't he, Rich, to Falcao? And really, although Diakabi was good last night and has a good moments, he's maybe more of an experienced man, especially in these Champions League evenings.
As you've both rightly pointed out, it's the experience, I think, that Monaco have looked to sign there. They've got, as we all know, they've got a lot of inexperienced, young, exciting players, Diakabi being one of them. I can't recall seeing a fee being mentioned. One must have been, but I don't think it's actually, in the grand scheme of things, very much. So, in that regard, with the experience that he brings, both domestically and in Europe, it seems, on the face of it, it seems a very, very canny signing. So it will be interesting to see how he plays, how he plays in that side, whether it becomes to the detriment of some of the younger players like Diakabi, whether it's just to, as a player, to perhaps give Falcao a little bit of a rest every now and again. We shall wait and see. But I think on the whole, this looks to be a fairly decent signing.
Yeah, let's get out of the transfer craziness for a moment and back to action on the field for a bit. And Sunday evening saw Monaco put Marseille to the sword, really. A 6-1 drubbing at the Stade Louis II that shines a light on both sides, really. But let's start with the hosts first, Peter. What did you make of Monaco in this win?
Well, they were very, very impressive. I think that goes without saying. It's one thing to take on a side who had clearly set up in a terrible way and had set themselves out defensively to hold off Monaco and then shot themselves in the foot within the first 20 minutes. But to also do it repeatedly, to be ruthless, is the mark of a side that means business this season. And they're showing really that, that they have suffered a little bit in the transfer window, but they've also got the foundation stones there to recover. And it's not necessarily going to be a season where it'll be transitional and there'll be plenty of points off PSG. But they have the potential there maybe to push them. I still think, especially if Mbappe goes, it is PSG's title. But they were very, very impressive, Monaco, last night. And I think there are a number of different players who really stood out. I think Falcao, for one, he looks really to be in terrific form this season. He scored 7 goals already, which is about, I think, it's a goal every 50 minutes or something, which is very, very impressive. A great header is the second goal. I mean, obviously the first one was a penalty, but the header, obviously it was a flick on from Diakabi, and his reaction to just throw himself at the ball and put it past Mandanda. He looks sharp. He looks ready for this season, and he looks like he's going to take some of the weight and some of the pressure that will exist up front now that Mbappe may be jumping ship. And I think this could be one of the first seasons we've seen Falcao really push on after his recent troubles, after his knee injury. And he was very good last season, don't get me wrong, but I think this season, with more importance placed on him up front to find goals, he will be important for them, and he looks like he's ready to step up. But I mean, you could go through the whole Monaco team and wax lyrical about them. I thought Ronnie Lopez was very good. Not easy coming in on the right-hand side, taking over from Bernardo Silva. I thought he absolutely annihilated Hubocan at left back. It was embarrassing at times. Great pace, great feet, a real threat. I mean, we've known him to be a prospect, I think, in recent times. He's shown glimpses, but maybe he'll relish the challenge this season of being able to step into the Monaco first team and take on that role as his own. And I think he was very, very good last night. Obviously, I think the highlight really actually for Monaco is how solid they are at the back, and it seems like it's a trademark of Jardim to build from the back going forward and then use the attacking flair as a bonus almost. And obviously that's epitomised by Kamil Glik, and he's just an absolute machine in front of goal this season. I think he's in my opinion, he's one of the best, if not the best, centre halves in France. I mean, obviously he's good in front of goal, but him, Jemison, George has come in and done well at left back as well, replacing Mendy, and Sidibe at right back. They look a really, really solid back four. I mean, they haven't really been tested yet. Marseille didn't really put them under much pressure. But they're forming they have a formidable partnership. I do have some reservations about Subasic, but with that back four in front of them, then they're going to do well again this season. And set pieces, I think one of the things with Monaco I felt coming in before last night was the fact that they have been reliant on their goals from set pieces. And obviously Glick's got a couple, Jemison, Falcao last night as well. And it's a real weapon, and they're using it to full effect with both deliveries from Lamar and Moutinho. But I think what was important for what they showed last night was that attacking flair, that verve that really drew them so many fans across France and across Europe last season is still very much in evidence. And Jardim's got them playing, the same way, and they've been ready for the changes that have happened this summer, and they look ready to go again. So yeah, they're thoroughly impressive.
Rich, what are the standout candidates from you from last night? I mean, there's plenty really to pick out from Monaco, really. They sort of cruised to the victory in the end, but there's a couple of really great players out there on Sunday night, wasn't there?
There was. And I would put my name as well in the Kamil Glick being one of the league's best defenders, if not the league's best defender over the certainly last season and into this season as well. I sort of put a rhetorical question out yesterday during the match, actually, of since the start of last season, has there actually been a better signing than the 11 million euros that Monaco spent on Glick? And I think you'd be hard pushed to find somebody that represents, incredible value, both financially but also in what he offers to the team. But Glick was fantastic. I've been really impressed with Moutinho this season. It seems silly to say for a player as well known, and he was one of those original big name signings that Monaco made. But I think there was a lot of expectation, I think, on him this season, with Bakayoko having gone, and he's seemingly taking the spot of Tielemans. So I've been impressed with how well he started the season. I don't know whether it's going to last, but I have been quietly impressed with how well he's performed. As a self-confessed Rome fan, it is really good to see how well Diakabi's made his start with Monaco. I worried that the move was perhaps a little too soon. He's perhaps a little bit too raw of a player, but he's been thrown into that seemingly as the Mbappe replacement, and all the expectation that's carried. And he's looked great. He's got a really good relationship with Falcao already. Has already laid on a couple of assists for him, got his first goal last night. So really hoping that he can continue to develop with the club, because on his day, he can be a really special player. Yeah,
and he was really unlucky as well in that, just after the first goal where he got put through as well, and Mandonda's nudged it onto the post as well. He could have had two, and it could have been even worse last night. And I'm going to join the Kamil Glick Society, I think. I'm going to go one better than both of you. I think he's the best centre-back in Ligue, and he might be one of the best centre-backs in Europe at the moment. I think he's terrific. I agree with you, Rich. I don't think there's been a better signing for value in Europe in the last 2 years. He's a leader. He's a great centre-back. They did the business so early as well. It was middle of the Euros. They were still talking to Torino. No one else even knew about it. And I think he was a great steal and exactly the kind of player they desperately needed. Let's talk about Marseille quickly, though, as well. And this was a real reality check, let's be honest, Peter.
Yeah, it was definitely a reality check of just how far they've got to go if they want to become and achieve what they're setting out to on their Champions project. I think there was some ruthless jibes thrown at Marseille last night, and they were warranted. I mean, they were wretched, but I think when we think about why Marseille lost last night, and Rudy Garcia said it himself, I really do think that the blame does lie with him to a large extent. Obviously, he wasn't helped by not having Ng, not having Payet, but he really just sapped the attacking life out of the side before kickoff. Obviously, playing a back three that was so wooden and slow. Rolando, Dorian, Sertic. Sertic isn't really a centre half. Then you had Huberchan at left back, which was just unfortunate, and then Amavi in front of him, and it's just recipe for chaos, really. And I think Doria got a 1, and so did Sertic from L'Equipe. So and they don't, well, they're ruthless with their ratings, but that sums up how badly how bad they played last night. And I think, it's great when you set up defensively to try and shield against Monaco, but when you can see the goals that they did, especially from set pieces, it was a little bit like they hadn't played together before, and they hadn't, especially in that system. And obviously they're missing Rami at the back, and it's quite concerning from a Marseille perspective to see that they're evidently quite reliant on him. It's a reality check. I think I think that's definitely the best way to put it, Nathan. And that it's not come out of the blue. They haven't exactly set Ligue 1 on fire this season. They struggled a bit against Domzale, and they scraped past Nantes, and they dropped points against Angers. I feel that with Marseille that they've still got a long way to go, and it's longer than I think many expected. I think that's part of it. They have invested, but you can't solve these issues overnight. But I think why the defeat was so bad last night does come back to Rudy Garcia for me. I don't know if you guys agree on that.
Yeah, just very quickly, I'm going to break into a moment that GFFN have just tweeted about the Jovetic story. Supposedly RMC are saying it's not true, which is a real disappointment if it is.
Sports.
Yes, they really are, aren't they? Rubbish. Rich, the formation that Marseille showed last night, though, it was surely a ginormous risk. I know they're playing Monaco, was so dangerous on the attack, but playing a pseudo 5-4-1 that didn't really look like anything like a 5-4-1 or a 5-3-2 or whatever they thought it was. Surely you don't mix away from the things that have been succeeding you so far, even if you are playing a big side.
That's the question I've been asking myself ever since the game kicked off last night. I do not know why that formation was played by Garcia. Yes, okay, you're playing Monaco, but you're Marseille. You are a giant of the French game. You're undergoing this current quote unquote champions project. You've signed some good players. You've signed some iffy players as well. And then you go and put that formation out, untested against an opposition who love to attack. So why play such an untested formation and untested players in that formation? It just baffled me. It really did. And if this doesn't, previous performances over the last year should have, set the alarm bells ringing. But if this now doesn't lead, the directors and Garcia to go out and look at that defence and recruit well for that defence, then nothing will. And this project will not be a champions project. This project will be a 6th place project at best. Because they have needed good defensive recruitments for a number of months now. Amavi, had a very bad game last night, but he is a step in the right direction. I think we're all confident that he does have the talent. He's at the right age where he can rediscover the form that he had at Nice. That he has, he's back to his best after that injury. But my goodness, do they need recruitment, and they need it fast, because we're talking only a few days now until the transfer window ends. But this has to be the final. Well, this is the final wake-up call that they will have before that transfer window closes. So if they don't recruit now and recruit well, say goodbye to a top 3 place.
Yeah, I'm going to go on a quick rant here. I think about this. I think I'm going to give Armavi a little bit of a pass because he played essentially as a left winger yesterday. He was the furthest forward sometimes in the first half because they just didn't know where they were playing. They did not know this formation at all. If you told me there was 3 centre-backs, I would have told you were lying, because at least one of them were absent, if not 2. I know both the main culprits were really given a drubbing by L'Equipe, but they were awful defensively. I love defensive football sometimes, and I couldn't believe how bad they were. Luis Gustavo is a defensive midfielder that every time Fabinho touched the ball, he ran at him. and left the centre of the field open. And I was thinking, what are you doing? There's Sanson next to you who's the one who's supposed to be doing that. There's other players around you that should be doing the ones. You should be the one sitting in front of those three defenders who are playing awful. I couldn't believe it. From the first minute, it capitulated. The goal, it's a wonderful goal from Glick. How a centre-back scored that, I don't know. But a wonderful goal has completely crippled them. It bamboozled them. It put them into shock mode. And they just ran around the field as if there was no direction about them at all. They were lucky probably in the second half that Monaco went, this game's over. We don't really need to try. This could have been 8, 9. If they really went for it and Monaco really went for the throat, this could have been utterly embarrassing. And Garcia would have been out today if that happened. He needs to turn things around quickly. They've spent money. They've got no arguments about bringing more players in. They've brought in plenty this summer. They need to do absolutely a lot more about this. Either the decision makers at the board level need to change because they're not bringing in the right players, or the manager needs to go sooner rather than later, really. And I think that's a sentiment that a lot of Marseille fans will be saying today, because this wasn't just a bad performance by the players. This was an awful performance by the manager, who really put them out to die that evening. And that's a real shame for a club that should be playing a lot better, having spent that much money this summer. We'll leave it at that for them. Let's move on.
There is just one very quick thing. A brilliant tweet that Octagon put out after the match yesterday, that Monaco's defenders this season have scored more goals than Lille, Strasbourg, Troyes, Nice, Montpellier, Amiens, Caen, Metz and Nantes. Which I think sums up that Monaco philosophy of everybody gets in on the goal act. Hammers that home.
Yeah, especially when you're centre-back scoring overhead kicks. I think that does help as well, to be fair. Let's move on to the national team, who obviously play this week in a round of qualifiers. And they were announced without too many huge surprises, really, to us now. A lot of those players that got into the squad really deserve to be there, really, on honesty. But I do want to talk about a subject that we probably hate about talking about, but let's put this one to bed for once and for all, and that's Karim Benzema. It's a topic that comes around a lot of times. I know you love it, Rich, especially. It's no longer a case of how good he plays, is it? He is not coming back in the setup, is he?
He's not. I think Deschamps has been very clear about that, but Madrid fans and journalists alike seem to, every time there is a squad announcement, Benzema gets asked. You see Deschamps, his face drops more than normal, and he wheels out the same old lines. He must be bored sick of it, because I certainly am. And I'm not the one that's been asked these questions, but he's made it very clear Benzema has no place in this squad currently. But that is not going to change while Deschamps is in charge, certainly. And to be honest, it doesn't need to change. France don't seem to have a problem with scoring goals. You look at the attack that was announced, there's goals there. There's reliable players. There's players that haven't let Deschamps down, haven't let the national side down, haven't disgraced themselves, so numerous times that Benzema has. So for me, it's a null point. It doesn't need to be discussed anymore, because Deschamps has been clear. And I have this argument with people on Twitter all the time. Whenever there's a squad announcement, is I can count on one hand, probably even less than that, the amount of excellent performances Benzema put in for the national team. There was one, I think, in the World Cup when they played Ecuador. Was that in the 2010 World Cup? That must have been.
Yes.
And he played out on the wing, I think, in that game, and played really well. Sulked. I want to play centre forward. He played centre forward next game. Back to being rubbish. So for me, I've never ever disputed how well he plays for Real Madrid. He's a top striker for Madrid. He just doesn't do it for France. And him and Deschamps don't see eye to eye, which is obviously a very big understatement. But the fact of the matter is, he doesn't perform for France. If he doesn't perform for France, he shouldn't play for France. Simple as that.
And in fairness, that Madrid team is sort of built in a way that maybe hides some of his absences that happen, especially in the France side, when he probably should be their best player. It might be a bit better now with some of the players around him, but he's maybe a little bit shadowed at Madrid, even though he can be excellent on his day. Peter, no Sissoko, no Kabay, new Deschamps.
Finally gets to him. Yeah, I think with Deschamps, he reminds me a little bit of. I know this will may not go down so well, but he does remind me of Roy Hodgson. And I say that just hear me out. I went to a talk which he gave. I think it was a year and a half ago now, and it was about trying to foster this club mentality with the national team, which is exceptionally difficult to do because obviously they only see them for a handful of days a year. And the reason you will keep seeing players like Kabay or Sissoko is that they like having the same faces. It's like why you always ended up with Walcott in the national team or Ashley Young back in the day or something like that. It's this idea that, you know, if they're familiar with each other and they're familiar with the system, then that benefits the side in the longer term. And I think finally it's reached a point where for Deschamps, these players aren't good enough necessarily compared with the talent pool that France have, and France's talent pool is exceptional. But yeah, so I think that's why we've seen them, and it's refreshing to see that we're going to see other faces in there for a change. So merited, and so I can't see how Sissoko has managed to survive so long, especially when we look at where he's been playing, especially when he plays wide and the attacking talent that France have, it's a bit obscene. So, yeah, that's my take on it, essentially. And I think it's good to see that he is now moving on. We hope, fingers crossed.
Yeah, it seems strange to feel that seeing that side and not seeing Sissoko's name, it seems almost hollow. I'm going to quickly put some nonsense to bed while we mentioned the French team. And West Ham fans, Payet's not there because he's injured. He's been injured for the last couple of weeks. That's why he's admitted. Unsurprising there. He might not have got in anyway, which would have been right for them to say. But at the moment, you can't really badger a man while he's already down. Any omissions that you can see really, Rich? I mean, Sebastian Courchier maybe at right back because Jallet seems a little bit redundant, although the Frenchman has not played great for Sevilla. He didn't play yesterday either. Anthony Martial, maybe. He scored 2 goals in 25 minutes, 2 sub-appearances. Was all right against Swansea, wouldn't grab a goal. Or is this maybe just, fair, especially for him at least anyway, a bit too competitive to get in?
To touch on the latter subject there, I'd quite like to have seen Martial given a go. I thought he's responded to quite a lot of... I think he's received... perhaps not publicly, but a lot of flack, I think, from Deschamps and Mourinho. I think, you know, he's no longer this star, magic young player that he was. You know, he joined Man United under that sort of banner. But I think actually, you know what, he's responded well this season. You know, got a couple of goals, has looked, you know, quite a threat at times. So it did surprise me that Kingsley Coman was included, because I thought maybe that spot could have gone to Martial. Right back, my goodness, that's a problem position for France. You know, Djibril Sidibe, great player going forward, dreadful defender. But, you know, no qualms about his attacking abilities, but his defensive duties are a lot to be desired. And Jallet it just highlights how much of a problem position that is for France. You know, where are these, you know, future right backs? And there's a real sort of dearth of them. You know, Courchier, yeah, okay, but even he's what, 25, 26 now, and okay, he made that move to Sevilla, which on the face of it looked promising, but has yet to, you know, come to anything close to fruition. So, you know, it's almost a case of, is it Jallet by default because there's nobody else? It's certainly a big area of concern, and I think it has been for a while. You know, for a number of years, France heavily relied on it being, you know, Sagna or Jallet, and all of a sudden they've got to an age where they're no longer what they were, and France are left with a bit of a hole at right back.
Very quickly, Peter, any omissions for you that you can take of note?
Not really. I'd echo much of the sentiment. I think right back is almost at the moment it's a bit like a unfulfilled potential. I think Serge Aurier and then obviously Courtier. A few years ago, you'd look at those two coming through and think, okay, France have got some options here, and it hasn't really worked out for either yet. Obviously, Aurier could get a move elsewhere, so it'd be interesting to see what happens there. But Courtier, you're right, Rich. I agree completely. He needs to really step on at Sevilla. I think the only thing I'd say about the squad is I think it's questionable that Mbappe's there, because if he's not been in the right mental state to play for Monaco, I don't understand how he can be in the right mental state to play for France. And I feel like obviously Deschamps wants the right people in that circumstance, but if he's got this transfer looming over him and he's still got it's not resolved, evidently, how can he possibly feature for France in an important qualifier? So that's my potential take, and it'd be easy for Deschamps to say that. Of course, maybe the clubs may not want him, Monaco may not want him, because I don't know. To be honest, I actually can't see why. Omissions, I agree with Martial. I think Martial deserves a shot. I mean, he has only started, I think, the once. Is that right?
Yeah, this one's again.
He's been an impact sub, so that's probably in his thinking. And obviously, Deschamps has already criticised him before, so yeah, But all in all, I think it's a reasonably unsurprising squad.
Right, let's talk about our Ligue snapshots really, and get a couple of those very very quick round if we can. And starting with you, Richard, what's your snapshot this week?
For me, it's very quickly. It's just three managers under pressure. I've spoken on previous shows. Is Bielsa facing a little bit of a problem? They got a reasonably fortunate 1-1 draw away at Angers. After all the expenditure over the summer, all the players coming in, the unveiling of Bielsa as manager, and all this, that, and the other, one win after 4 games, certainly not the result that they were looking for. So, question marks over him, let alone Bielsa's nature, shall we say. Christian Gourcuff at Rennes, I think evident last season with him. He's sort of been given this stay of execution, if you like. Money has been spent. I think, as I've said earlier tonight, has been spent actually quite well. But still no win. Second bottom. Defence looks in disarray at times. Very little threat going forward, or consistent threat going forward. Players don't seem to be interested in playing for Gourcuff anymore, which is normally the sort of final tipping point. So, could you be tempted to put some money on Gourcuff being the first managerial casualty of the season? You could probably get decent odds on that. And then the final one, Lucien Favre, was very explicit after the Napoli game that he was not a happy man. Was not a happy man with the board, was not a happy man with certain players. I don't think there's any danger of him leaving, especially as he signed a new contract over the summer. And especially after everything he did for the club last season. So I don't think there's a danger of the board getting rid of him. I think there's a danger of him just walking away. Thinking, board aren't backing me here, are letting me down. For me, there's three managers under pressure to keep an eye
on. Peter, I know yours is from Ligue 2 this week. What's your snapshot?
Yeah, very briefly. Mine's Geoffrey Jourdain of Nancy. Do check the video out. It's on the GFFN Twitter feed. He took umbrage with the Brest Ultras towards the end of that game. Decided to boot a ball into the crowd. Didn't go down well. Body streaming onto the pitch. Got sent off. He has since apologised, and Nancy lost that game 2-1. So that's my snapshot. Do check it out. It's very entertaining. He definitely he lost his cool.
Yeah, and a bit risky, really. To be fair, if that would have been Bastia, it might have been a different story. I'm going to quickly highlight 2 goalkeeping moments for me, because I love a good goalkeeping reaction save and some clever goalkeeping from 2 goalkeepers on the opposite end of the spectrum, really. One is the absolutely magnificent Stéphane Ruffier, who doesn't get enough praise at all from the world. Maybe one of the world's most underrated goalkeepers. The save he makes from the deflection from Loic Perrin on Friday evening is absolutely terrific. Do search it out. It's deflected to maybe slightly towards him, but it's deflected onto goal, literally straight in front of him. And his reaction push it out wide is absolutely world class. It's a terrific save. The other one is from Rennes goalkeeper Rachel Bowley from a free kick, and there's two Toulouse players right in front of him, and he sort of palms it and claws it away from the two of them and stops them from possibly push it into the goal, because a normal keeper might have saved it and deflected it into one of them, and it ends up in the back of the net anyway. Didn't have the best of games, had a good couple of moments, had a couple of bad moments, but that was a really, really good bit of goalkeeping, I thought. And I love those little moments when you get them. Time for some viewers' questions, really, and I'll do two each for you, and then very quick answers if you can. So first one's from Finbar Evans, and I'll give you this to you, Rich. Do you think Marseille paid a lot of money for not much improvement, at least in the medium term?
Absolutely. I think the players they bought, one or two exceptions. Morgan Sanson is a solid investment. Jordan Amavi, solid investment. Valère Germain, solid investment. There's a lot of iffy players, I think, that they've bought. And as we've touched on earlier tonight, there's a lot of players they haven't bought. So it's still quite a confusing project. But I do think that they will live to regret not thinking in the now and trying to think too much in the future.
I've got two questions from Thomas. I'll throw the first one at you, Peter. What do you think of Angers' start to the season?
I've been quite impressed with Angers. They picked up some big points. They picked a point against Marseille, point against Lille. I mean, I think actually, watching the Lille game on Sunday, they'll be very disappointed not to have taken all three. Because Lille were gifting them chance after chance. They are horrendous at the back. I mean, they are next level bad. They are. I mean, I don't know if it's El Loco or what, and adapting to each other to the system. But gosh, the amount of chances they were giving them, and Crivelli up front was just causing chaos. They just kept giving him the ball and sending him through on goal, and relying on last ditch challenges from Alonso. So, but in terms of Angers, I've been very impressed with them. They've got a good squad. In the right areas as well, and they picked up important points. So yeah, they could have another good season this time around. I don't see why not. Very, very good start to the season.
Yeah, solid mid-table side. I really like Koku Tam. I can't remember say his name properly. It's Carl, scored against Marseille. It's going to escape my brain for the rest of the evening, I think. Never mind. I've passed this one on to you, Rich. Who do Mets need to get with all this Ismail Sarr money?
They need a striker. They really do. They need some goals, and he is not the player. He's not the player they needed. To be honest, they really needed to have signed Cheikh Diabate. They had him on loan last season. He got some really important goals. He's got good Ligue experience. I can't believe he's going to have cost a lot of money. I don't believe he would have been on phenomenal wages. It looks like he could be going to Guingamp instead. So I think that's a sign that Mets could be left to room. But it's a put it this way, it's a reliable goal scorer. Emmanuel Rivera is just not that player.
I'm thinking if he goes to Guingamp, try and see if you can keep him fit. Sloan Privat's not a bad player that's a similar build. Maybe that might be an interesting idea for them. Finally, from Simon Query, who sends a few questions in. Fair play to him. It's nice to see him again. Peter, what club or clubs, I just need the names of the clubs really, do you think need to do transfer business before the window closes?
Marseille. Let me have a think. Just moving my way through the league table. Marseille, and as we just say, I think Mets do need a goal scorer, as Rich was saying. Yeah, we'll leave it at that for now.
Yeah, I'm going to throw Rennes in there. I'm sure Rich would as well. To be fair, with the Dembele money, they surely can spend a couple of pennies to finish off the end of the transfer window. Let's hope they do. And that's all for this time. Well, more we have time for this week. My thanks to Rich, Peter, and all of you listening at home. There'll be no Thursday show this week because of the international break, but we will be back here next week at the same time, same place next week. Do remember as well, we will have our live service as well on Thursday evening, heading into sort of Friday afternoon as well, if it for the end of the window as well. So stay tuned to our Twitter feed and our website for that. But for now, a bientôt and goodbye.